Shalom, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Call Halon Yahweh Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai Bashim, Rachaha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, elders of Great Millstone. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the hopefully elect. Brother Isaiah, argument that you with another lesson to the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai Bashim, Rachaha Kodash, Lord willing. This lesson is edifying. One law for Esau and another law for the people. Really, you could say another law for Jacob, but, we'll just say another law for the people. All right, you got this case here with this dude, Cameron Herron. All right, he got sentenced to 24 years in prison, all right, for crashing into a mom and a baby, okay, and they was unalive due to this crash. All right, and you had a lot of people that was, crying out justice for Cameron. Justice for Cameron. And the thing is that, Esau, you have people just, justice for Cameron when there's two people that are unalive, okay? Esau will come up with one law for the Edomites and another law for the rest of the people, which really is you tribes, There's a narrative, as the scriptures call him, the accuser of our brethren. All right. And the scriptures also say, thou slanderest thine own mother's son. Okay. Thy tongue framest deceit, and thou slanderest thine own mother's son. All right. Because at the end of the day, there's a narrative that's pushed out there. All right. And, I kind of went into this briefly on another lesson, how there is what you call fatigue, all right? But, you can feel the hatred that Esau has. And Esau has gotten comfortable in putting the blame on you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, okay? They'll see a situation, where Jake is doing different things. All right, and I try not to myself. I try to be balanced. As the scriptures say, a false balance is an abomination to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. So I try to be balanced. All right, and to not make excuses for Jake's bad behavior. We know there are 2/3 and everything like that. But you also, having said that, okay, there are still situations. I'm doing a video. There are still situations, okay, where you have to acknowledge that Jake is in a disproportionately, disadvantageous situation, man. All right, you can't just sit up there and just, these niggas and the narrative and the. Yeah, well, there are things that Esau has done to kind of facilitate some of the conditions of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. They went into the homes, of people that was on Section 8, all right, and said if you got a man, if a man is present, if they even see the evidence that a man has been living, you could lose your benefits, all right, which incentivized the so-called black woman, all right, and the women of the tribes to kick the man out, okay, primarily you so-called black women. The tribe of Judah was the main target, okay, of these different acts, man. All right, and as I said, that kind of creates a condition where, there's already what they did during slavery. This goes back to slavery, okay, where they did buck breaking, okay, and where they basically rendered the black man helpless. All right, which gave the so-called black woman a lack of faith in her man. She looked at her man as though she couldn't depend on him. Okay, that he couldn't save her from massa. And you kind of have that dynamic a little bit today. Okay, and you got Esau. Esau has been given damn near a silver spoon. Okay, a silver spoon in their mouth. All right, now don't get me wrong. You got poor of every nation. Okay, you got poor Edomites out there. Even the poor Edomites, have a little something. All right, generally speaking. and we see an increase in poverty. But the point is that you got this narrative out there of pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and you know. But then you also have people that work in the benefits, the field of benefits, so to speak. EBT and everything, SNAP, Section 8, that have gone on record and said, yeah, we're told to deny your application. We're told if you're a male to flat out deny you. Okay, we're told if you have a name that's ethnic to reject your application. All right, and so you end up having, females and effeminate men, okay, put in a position of power. All right, and a lot of Jake have a restricted access to even basic money. Okay, there was a time where I have experience working in the fast food. That ain't really which I ain't, thankfully I'm not in that now, but I'm just saying, like, there was a time during the recession, like years back, man, I couldn't even get a McDonald's job in the area that I was living in. Okay, because before I had moved from Atlanta to Dallas, and I couldn't, man, when I tell you it wasn't a job for seemed like I couldn't find a job nowhere, man. And when I would go to these different establishments, it was all women. It didn't matter that I was very experienced in all things, fast food. It didn't matter, man. It was like, nah, nigga, you can't work here. Okay, and so it's just things like that where you kind of feel it. You tend to feel it, man. The same state, man, I was trying to get some emergency benefits, man, and I think I got I think they gave me 1 month of food stamps, and then they cut me off, and they was like, nah, you ain't getting no more, and so yeah, man, it's just stuff like that where Esau will but Esau will formulate these mindsets like, it's all you niggas on food stamps and this and that, and there's as the scriptures say, you gotta be a proverb and a byword, all right, among the nations whither I shall scatter thee. Okay, so there is that, but when you really get into the numbers, really it's a lot of Edomites. That it was when there was videos of people crying about EBT. Man, I seen a lot of so-called white faces in them videos, man. Okay, a lot of so-called white faces that was with tears on them, man. I can't feed my babies. What am I gonna do about I can't feed? What I'm saying? Because the true understanding is that, man, a lot of you heathens, especially you Edomites, okay, y'all receive these different assistances. Some of the most money we give out is to them 48ers, man. Okay, the Holy Land, the people in the Holy Land, them imposters, they receive a lot of aid from the government here, man. Okay, so just something to be mindful of. All right, but hey, man, let this would have been a Jake, man. Let this would have been a Jake, and he got 24 years. They'd have been screaming for the maximum. Give him 30. Which I was watching the video from this dude, Ugo Lord, the little lawyer's reaction, the little guy, whatever, and that's what prompted me to do this lesson. Okay, and this is why ultimately we have hope in prophecies. As the scriptures say, we have no continuing city, but we hope for one to come. Okay, and that's the kingdom of heaven being established on the planet Earth, the rulership of the Israelites being established on the planet Earth, and the destruction of America, Babylon the Great. Okay, when you go into Revelation 9 and it tells you, he that have an ear, let him hear. Okay, he that leave into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. It says this is the faith and the patience of the saints. So we have faith, and we patiently await for them that put us into captivity to go into captivity. All right, that is the patience and faith of the saints. Okay, if anybody tell you otherwise, whether it be an angel or whoever, that we supposed to be sitting up here lottie-don and holding hands, with these Edomites, man, that's incorrect. All right, we're supposed to be waiting to be able to render double the recompense that they dealt unto us, man. All right, double for her iniquities, man. All right, in the book of Psalms where it says you this honor have all his saints. You know, right above that it talks about having a two-edged sword in their hand to render basically judgments, recompense unto the heathen and judgments unto the wicked people, man. You see, this honor have all his saints, so that's considered an honor. All right, whereas these people out here will have you feel ashamed to desire such things, but this just shows you the hypocrisy, the double standard that Esau has, in the feeling that he tries to promote, okay, amongst his own people, man. Which really it all just goes back to hatred and jealousy, man. Hatred and jealousy. Which, hey, that goes all the way back to what? Cain and Abel, man. Cain and Abel. Cain was jealous of Abel for receiving the righteous blessing, but Abel did what he was supposed to do, and Cain didn't do what he was supposed to do. All right, now ultimately we know man's goings are of the Lord, so the Lord orchestrated Esau selling his birthright, but that ain't stopping Esau from being mad at Jacob, okay, for quote unquote tricking him. All he did was ask you, hey man, sell me your birthright. And you ain't have to say yes. You could have said no. Why wouldn't you raise questions? If you really cared about your birthright, why wouldn't you ask, well, what you want with my birthright? Why wouldn't you question it? All right? You can get mad, but because you was blinded by hunger or whatever the excuse you want to make. Okay? It would have been better to die with your birthright. You see what I'm saying? Or endure hunger for a time for your birthright than to sell it. You didn't have no faith. Ultimately, thought you was, what you thought you was gonna die. I am famished. What value have this birthright? Let me eat now. Then your belly get full. Okay, you stave off your hunger. Then you should have been regretting it after that. Like, wait a minute, what did I just do? What did I just do? That should have been your question, because then you want to get mad at your brother. Don't get mad at him. He didn't make you sell it. He didn't do it at gunpoint. You asked him for his food. Okay? And the Lord put the spirit on him to, take an opportunity. Is not his name Jacob? Yaiquab? You knew he was a supplanter. You knew who you was talking to. Okay? You got. That ain't nobody's fault but yours, which like I said, the Lord created Esau to be the wicked man. All right? But this is just more of a spiritual rant, about this situation, which we tie these things into spirituality. Okay? Esau, he's a carnal man. All right? And he's ruled by his belly. That's why when they came to the Americas, you got reports of them eating dead bodies. The nigga, he's a foolish, carnal man, okay? And rather than die, he'd do decrepit and wicked shit, He can't get him no box. He'll sleep with an animal. You see? It's just things like that where it's like, and he got the nerve to call himself the most civilized nation on the planet Earth. Like he had to civilize, the savage niggers that, whatever, man. The savage Indians. All right. Native Americans, so you understand, Northern Kingdom. Meanwhile, this nigga's got dog brothels. It's just, unspeak things that are near unspeakable. Things that make you shy away from even speaking, make you feel weird to even say. Why is there a a dog phallic sex toy? Why do you make such a thing? Okay, or things of that nature, man. Because you are a evil, wicked, okay, a vile individual in the earth, man. The most vile, the basis of all men, as the scriptures say. You know, this is to the decree of the that the most high ruleth in the kingdom of men and giving it unto whoever, unto the basis of men, roughly paraphrasing. All right, that's what we see. The lowest level nigga on the planet is in rulership. And as the scriptures say, when the wicked rule, the people mourn. Okay? When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. So why aren't the people rejoicing if you're the righteous, as you make yourself? As the scriptures say, he sitteth in the temple of God, showing that himself that he is the Most High. That's what he says. Scripture says, surely that turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. All right. So, for the thing that is formed say unto him that formed it, why have thou made me thus? This is what Esau says. Oh, why did you make me a bipedal, whatever, these niggas, trying to quote unquote improve DNA and, gene splicing. Here it is, the Lord created different fruits and vegetables. Okay, and Esau just, he manipulates them and hybridizes them, and then they become wicked for you. All right, such as what do you have? Like, a lot of people have celiacs or have a gluten intolerance. Okay, but then you come to find out that the modern gluten or the modern wheat is a hybridized form of wheat. All right, which increases the likelihood of having a sensitivity. You eat some wheat in this society, you start forming all type of mucus. You might start itching. You might start turning red. You might break out in hives. You might get bloated. Different things like that, where it's like, damn. Why couldn't he just leave it alone? Well, as the scriptures say, by thy sword shalt thou live. So everything this devil does, okay, is leads to death, man. It all leads to death. Well, okay, which goes to prove that he's Esau. Okay, you shall have the fatness of the earth, and by thy sword shalt thou live. Literally, the way this nigga creates food, as I have been quoted to say in recent times. Okay, been saying for a while. Literally, the way you grow plants creates a lethal substance that is near impossible to get rid of. Niggas had to create a facility to get rid of fluoride, which is the byproduct of, guess what? Making fertilizer. Here it is, you making a fertilizer that's supposed to feed a plant and make it grow big, i.e. Miracle Grow, right? To name one. And what's the byproduct? Freaking fluoride, man. Freaking fluoride is the byproduct. You see? So that's just one of the proofs of his way of living, okay, essentially being a sword. Okay? That's just one of the proofs. All right, so this little story kind of sparked the lesson, then it kind of went elsewhere. Lord willing, it was an edifying lesson. I want to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, Bahashem Racha HaKodash. Double honor to the apostle elders, a great millstone, peace, blessing, and salutation to the hopefully elect. Till next time, I want to say shalom. Shalom.